there were definitely plenty of times where I was not my best self.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when things started to really click and I had good operators and a great team that I could rely on, I really got back to what I always had intended when it came to starting my own company, which was, my weekends are my family's. Even though I'll be available for emergencies after 6, generally, I'm cutting off at 6 and focusing on my family.
Aloha! Welcome to Hawaii's Best Podcast. Learn the stories behind Hawaii's best experiences, influencers, and businesses. Discover everything that makes Hawaii the Aloha State. And now your host, Bryan Murphy.
Aloha and welcome to episode 23 of Hawaii's Best. I'm your host, Bryan Murphy. Just want to say thanks so much for tuning in today. Hope you're having a great day, and wherever you're listening to this episode, just want to say thank you so much. Your time is very valuable, and I don't take that for granted. And I just want to say big mahalo for tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking with Ryan Emmons. He's the CEO of Waiakea. And I hope you find value in this conversation with Ryan. We get to hear more about Waiakea and what they're doing on the big island of Hawaii. But before we dive in, I just want to say thanks again for joining me. It'd mean the world if you would hit subscribe, leave a rating and a review. That helps other people who love Hawaii be able to find this conversation, this podcast. So, like I mentioned, Ryan Emmons is the CEO of Waiakea. You can find Waiakea by simply going to waiakeasprings.com. That's Waiakea springs.com. And follow them on Instagram at Waiakea. They have an epic Instagram account, so it's definitely worth following, seeing everything that they're up to, and you get to take in Hawaii in a beautiful Instagram feed. So I want to encourage you to check it out, give them a follow. But enough of my talking. We are going to go ahead and jump over and talk story with Ryan Emmons from Waiakea. Hey, Ryan, thanks so much for hopping on Hawaii's Best. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you're up to.
Yeah. So my name's Ryan Emmons. I'm the CEO of Waiakea, Hawaiian volcanic water. Nowadays, we're really just trying to build this company, trying to change a lot of industry norms in terms of sourcing, sustainable packaging, and carbon neutral logistics. And I got a baby on the way. So that's what I'm dealing with right now. I basically got 2 babies.
Awesome, man. So this is your second?
No, I'm just saying my company is basically the first. So I got the real one coming.
Got it.
My wife's due in April.
Oh, great, man. Congratulations.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about Waiakea and where this vision started back in 2012, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously there are a lot of bottled water companies out there. I don't think the world needs another bottled water company. That's really not what our goal was. Our goal was really to change the environmental industry norms. And not just of bottled water, but really of the greater beverage and consumer packaged goods industries. And that includes food products, anything that's basically packaged. And for us, that meant first and foremost, packaging is a huge issue. So, we were the first to use 100% upcycled packaging. We're about to launch some really cool innovation involving, basically we have the first end-of-life simple carbon wax bottle that will basically degrade if it ends up in the ocean, but it's still recyclable. So we're super excited about that. And then we're also working on some algae packaging. Everyone thinks that glass and aluminum is sustainable. The reality is, it's not, especially for what it takes in terms of energy to get it out to Hawaii. So we're actually working on the first 100% recycled. So basically our aluminum bottles will be made, they'll be super, super durable. So you can use them at least 4 times, which then is basically, that's what you need in order to reduce the carbon footprint. And then our glass will be the first glass that's 100% from cullet. And cullet is basically the glass bottles that you recycle. Then they're all basically ground up. And some of that is used to make new glass, but usually it's a very low percentage. So we're working on the first 100% cullet, basically 100% post-recycled glass bottle. And then, next year we'll have about 30% of all our logistics will be on electric fleets in Hawaii. So we're super excited. Going to continue to push forward with a lot of the environmental innovation in the hope that a lot of these other brands in food and beverage realize that this is what consumers want.
Right. I mean, in just 7 short years, that's a lot. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Obviously, obviously there was a vision prior to launching Waiakea, and what kind of led you to some of that?
I mean, to be honest, we did years of feasibility. Another huge thing is, there's so much growth in the premium water industry
Mm-hmm.
and in water in general and in beverage in general. But we did years to see where the consumer backlash was and, ultimately how we were going to feel good as a company moving forward. And so, we just launched like our Kokua initiative earlier this year where we actually pay all of our employees their hourly wages to volunteer 8 hours a month. So that's 25 people in Hawaii. So we're pretty stoked on that. But I think it was always, how do we do things in this industry differently so that like our employees can be engaged and we can be stoked about what we do. And at the same time, really at the beginning, we didn't necessarily know how all that was going to come together, but we had an idea. We spent, 3 years developing the brand and really looking at a lot of trends and looking at a lot of different packaging innovation. And we just realized that no one was really doing anything to address a lot of the kind of societal changes that were happening when it comes to consumer packaged products. So that was kind of our opportunity. And that's why we kind of wanted to tackle a very, definitely an industry with controversy, but one that, ultimately we thought was just ripe for change.
Something you mentioned earlier, upcycle recycling.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what that is a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So basically a lot of bottled water, actually not even bottled water. Let's talk about basically all packaging.
Okay.
To a large extent, most of our packaging comes from virgin materials. So materials that have been created and it's their first use versus if we are able to use 100% post-recycled materials. So basically materials that people have collected and they have to be cleaned for a food grade product. So there's not a lot of cleaning facilities that can do that kind of stuff with like post-recycled materials. But what that means is, you typically, depending on the industry, you can have, anywhere between a 70 to a 95% smaller carbon footprint, smaller water footprint, smaller energy footprint if you are reusing materials. And so as much as people are trying to come up with compostable and biodegradable bottles, the reality is that's a much bigger harm because of what those are derived from, whether it's like corn, sugarcane, et cetera, that are, monocrops that are taken a lot of deforestation in order to produce them.
Gotcha.
Versus just using the existing materials that are already there and giving them another life. And so that's what we do with our bottles. And eventually we're setting up collection centers all over the Pacific, Philippines, Indonesia, Hawaii, obviously. And we will be actually collecting ocean-bound plastic from waterways, beaches, et cetera. And that's actually how we put that together, clean it. We have a really unique cleaning facility, and that's what is ultimately going into our bottle. So we're preventing basically materials from going into the ocean. So we're pretty stoked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is awesome to be stoked about. I was looking on your guys' website and I'm just going to read just kind of what you guys list as your goal. It says, our goal was to create a transformation within the bottled water, beverage, and greater CPG industry, moving away from singular profit and towards a triple bottom line model that emphasizes people and planet. I was just wondering, maybe you could speak into what is meant by moving away from singular profit and towards triple bottom line model.
Yeah, for sure. So we're in the process of being a certified B Corp, so benefit corporation, where it's not just about shareholders, it's about like stakeholders, which involves your employees, your customers, your suppliers, and shareholders, but it's everyone, and including Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm.
I know. For us, I was heavily involved in clean water projects before this and NGOs, and my mom's somewhat of an environmentalist, and it was super important that whatever company I launched had similar goals. And there's just, especially the industry that I'm in, it's really dominated by a lot of these players where it's all about the bottom line. And a lot of the investments that we make in our local communities on the Big Island and Hilo, or in our clean water projects, both in Hilo and throughout Hawaii and also abroad, specifically in Malawi, Africa, people would look at what we're spending on these projects versus, the zero profit that we've had because we've been growing so fast, and they tell us that we were crazy, but we tell them that it was the right thing to do, and that it was a really important stepping stone for us, and that we wanted to continue to have that in our core fabric. And that ultimately is why we've had such good retention with all our employees too. So it pays its dividends, and that will end up in the bottom line, obviously, which will help us, be more self-sustaining as we go. It also just makes you feel good about going to work every day. Sure. Instead of just thinking that, why am I here? Am I just a cog in a machine that's just making these other people money? Versus like, wow, like we're building something amazing together, and I am actually helping my community.
I love that, man. And at least what I'm hearing is it was kind of an uphill battle. Maybe some of it still is to run the business how you envision. And what kind of kept you focused and driven? And what kept you focused and driven now?
We identified really quickly a couple different things that really have allowed us to stay focused as an organization. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple different things that I'll bring up that we identified, and they're all over our offices in Hawaii. They're all over our plant. They're all over our offices on the mainland. That's our brand promises. And so, and our brand promises are, we promise that every product you buy from us will be natural and healthy. Mm-hmm. We promise that every product you buy from us will be sustainably sourced and packaged and shipped. And then lastly, that every product you buy from us, for every product that you buy from us, we will basically contribute to local and global nonprofits and initiatives in clean water, conservation, and education. And those are basically our 3 milestones where if they don't fit in that kind of grid, we aren't going to be focusing on those products. That was coupled with, you kind of mentioned our purpose in different words, but, it's really to create a transformation within the bottled water, beverage, and greater CPG industry. And again, moving away from that simpler bottom line to a triple bottom line. And then we also laid out our big, hairy, audacious goals really early, again, 7 years ago. And that for us was to be known globally as really the envirotech leader in beverage and CPG. So we wanted to create an entirely fossil fuel-free product and supply chain, ultimately by 2024. And we would do that through a variety of different ways. 100% electric fleets, 100% renewable energy plant, 100% fossil fuel-free packaging with end-of-life option. And we're well on our way with a lot of these things. But, I think I was really lucky. We fine-tuned some of those, obviously. Right. But generally, we had the big, hairy, audacious goal from the get-go. We had the brand promises from the get-go. And, I think that really allowed us to focus, while a lot of other brands were focused on hey, let's focus on this flavor, or let's do sparkling, or all this other stuff. We were spending a lot of time and money on FDA trials for new packaging innovation that would be shelf stable and would be good for consumers. And, those things are finally going to launch over the next 2 years. But because everything else that we did centered around those things, I honestly think it just allowed us to not get distracted by a lot of the easy money makers that maybe were on the side, and really just focus in on, hey, let's just do what we do. Obviously, in a sales perspective, our sales strategy has changed. We didn't know what we were doing at first. We just were trying to get sales and, get the product out there. And, we grew in natural and we grew at Whole Foods, and that was a big focus for us. And then we realized a really small channel, and it was a really difficult channel where a lot of these bigger brands were just spending a lot of money because it was just more of aesthetics for them versus for us, we were trying to survive. And so we just couldn't compete with all the resources that they were throwing at those channels. So we obviously had to pivot and find other channels. For us, we found, our own e-commerce. Other brands did Amazon. We wanted to really take the customer experience into our own hands and really grow that out. And I'm really glad we did, because it's our most profitable channel. But yeah, man, tons of iterations on the way, but very lucky that no huge pivots, because we really always had the goal in mind.
And on your way, as you guys are growing throughout the years too, you mentioned you're giving back to nonprofits, and maybe speak into that a little bit. What are some of those nonprofits collectively as a company that you guys are really excited about?
Yeah, for sure. So we've done a lot of work with Kiki Steps, which is pre-K education. Mainly, obviously, most of our work is on the Big Island, but a little bit elsewhere. and also the High Education Initiative, which does some pre-K, but they also do a lot of like cultural programs for Native Hawaiians. We do, like I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of volunteering. All of our 25 employees are literally taken, basically we send them for a day and we pay them their regular hourly rate to go and volunteer. And we basically, it's a wide range of different activities. So like we volunteered at BISAC over on the Big Island, which is the nonprofit basically dealing with alcohol and drug abuse. And then, we just did an invasive species project the month before that, where we basically, we were up around Volcano National Park and up Mauna Loa and Waiakea, just in these really key areas, kind of removing all these different species. And then we also just we're doing basically a program where we're trying to clean Hilo Bay, and we're, helping some local farmers that are trying to basically develop clams and mussels and kind of start farming practices that are ultimately going to start filtering the water. So we had all of our team out there last month. So again, it totally changes every month. The whole idea is that like we want our community to come to us and to basically, find some projects that we can dedicate a lot of resources and time and potentially money towards.
Right. You mentioned your mom is a big influence on you, but I'm also curious too, maybe on some like influencers in your life, leadership, and as you're leading this company, who are some of those guys and what are some of those influences that you look up to?
Yeah, for sure. I would say if you have good parents, and I've been blessed to have good parents, then you definitely always have to put your parents up there.
Right.
I've been lucky that I've had some people take some pretty big chances on me over the years, other than my parents, that have been, amazing partners, whether it's, some of our suppliers, it's a lot of my employees that have, most of my employees are older than me. So I look up to a lot of them in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the way that my family has, not just my mom, my dad, but like my cousin Alex, who was one of my co-founders. So all my cousins on my mom's side are basically half Native Hawaiian. I'm like the only Haole in my family. And, the way that they've just always been so supportive and helpful. And, my cousin also was launching his business after he helped me launch Waiakea. And, he's basically been like right there with me, exchanging horror stories and helping me the way. But 7 years in, dude, there's just so many people that have helped me at different points. I was really lucky. I had a lot of mentors from different companies that have kind of been on a similar growth path as me. I don't know if you ever heard of like Runa Tea, which it's now it's distributed by Dr. Pepper Snaffle, but the founder of Runa, Dan, he co-founded it with this guy, Tyler. And he was one of my first mentors. And like he was incredible because he just allowed me to avoid so many of the pitfalls. And he also launched his company when he was, 22. I would not, I'm very lucky. My family and I, we still, have the majority of the company. And if I didn't have him, I think it would be a very different situation.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, so many different people. That's just how it is.
That's great, man. How do you, and I use the word balance because I don't know if there's necessarily everything can be all in balance at once, but I think it really comes down to values and priorities. But how do you stay true to your values, your priorities, whatever those might be, and keeping family? Because it sounds like family is super important to you. So how do you keep family first, and how do you personally unwind and from the busyness of running this company?
For sure. So I think the first, honestly, 4 years was pretty hectic. I mean, there were definitely plenty of times where I was not my best self.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when things started to really click and I had good operators and a great team that I could rely on, I really got back to what I always had intended when it came to starting my own company, which was, my weekends are my family's. Even though I'll be available for emergencies after 6, generally I'm cutting off at 6 and focusing on my family. But I would say I was never that guy that was, with the exception of the first 2 years, okay, where you definitely are working.
You're just running hard, right?
Yeah, you're running so hard, but you also know that it's not sustainable. Look, if we don't have better processes in place, better people, there's no way I can keep this up. I'm literally going to kill myself.
Right.
But in the back of my head, what's nice is like I was still making the time to like talk to family. I was still being vulnerable to family. And I don't think if I had the open relationship where I was like telling them about all my struggles and all my strife, I really think I would have just been a mess. And I don't think the company would have survived. Having that close relationship and feeling like, hey, I'm not going my pride aside, I'm just going to be real because it's my family and I'm going to tell them what I'm feeling and I'm going to tell them my struggles. They helped me figure out solutions and they just, they were there for me to tell me that like, hey, if things weren't going to work out, they still love me. And, ultimately like things would be okay. I might be bankrupt and have to live on a couch for a while, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, without my family, man, you would just be internalizing everything. And I think that's just such a nightmare. But a lot of people, again, I think I'm lucky that I had the type of relationship with my cousins and my parents and my aunties and my uncles, and where like it was like that. I know a lot of people don't have that. And, I just encourage those people to, just work on themselves and get to that point where they feel like they can share their flaws and the things that they're working on.
That's huge, man. Because having this goal, having this vision, I mean, there's one or two options, right? It's either like you go for it or you live with regret. And like, I didn't even try. So keeping your family along in the journey and keeping them close by and that love and support that you have and had in those early years, it's really cool to see the fruit of that today.
Dude, totally. And they're also so stoked to like, because then they know all the that you went through. And they were there,
sure.
And like, they were when you were venting to them, and like, I had a couple moments early on where like, yeah, man, I was straight up overwhelmed, and maybe even a tear or two. That's all I'm gonna say. And to my cousin, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I got 14 credit cards, and like, dude, like, what are we gonna do? And we talk about it to this day, and so it's stories for the rest of my life, but it's also like we went through that, and I honestly feel like we went through it together. So very, very lucky, very blessed.
Yeah, you're stronger for it, and it's who you are because of that. That's awesome, man.
For sure.
Ryan, if someone's coming to Hawaii, maybe for the first time or coming back on vacation, what advice would you give someone coming for a visit? Maybe some etiquette, maybe some things to do, things not to do.
But don't be taking no lava rock, that's for sure.
Right.
You will be cursed for the rest of your life. So obviously want to encourage you to, be here and experience what Hawaii has to offer. But please don't do that. Whatever you do. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, dude, I just think you need to make friends with locals.
There you go.
That's your first thing. Strike a conversation with someone, meet some people when you're out, and like they'll tell you some things and they'll tell you places to go that you'll just never have that experience. There's so many different sites where you can look at like things to do in Hawaii on each island, and just that they're never going to compare to actually being able to experience those things that someone that's local is,
so true. Yeah.
Been through. So, but it depends on what island you're at. So, on the Big Island, unfortunately, there's a lot of people were wanting to see the lava, and Volcano National Park is still pretty crazy because you can still see. You can still chill and see the lava, but there's not going to be any lava bombs blowing up in your face anymore. But that's probably for the best. But what's amazing about the Big Island is you have so many different climates, and just like literally driving like Saddle Road all the way over. I definitely recommend like road tripping up the Hamaku coast and check out all the waterfalls if you have a chance. Check out some of the lava caves. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that I don't really want to name drop because it's kind of like
for sure. Nope, I feel you.
But it's and then there's what's awesome too is that there's not as many spots as the other islands, but we definitely do have like our fair share of like small surf spots that aren't going to necessarily be as crowded in terms of lineups that a lot of other places are. So I think that's what's awesome about the Big Island.
Yeah, in general, maybe expanding on that a little bit. In general, what do you love most about Hawaii?
I would say the culture and the history there. I think there's this aura of, we call it like mana, this like ethereal power and just kind of magic that a lot of people feel when they come here. My wife's family, I mean, they're from New Hampshire. And the first time they came I was bring in, my wife's name is Grace. She was in Hawaii with me all the time, and finally got them to come out pretty quickly. It didn't take a lot of convincing. And they were like, what? We feel like weird. We feel different. Like, what is this? We feel like, and I think it's a culmination of all the elements and the wind, the rain, and the temperature and the water and everything. And I think it's just being open to just experiencing and loving nature and taking a step back and just breathing. I think that's what Hawaii has to offer, is just like, there's just a bountiful amount of energy and love if you find the right people and if you're able to go and experience the right things. I know that was kind of long-winded, but
no, there's so much truth there. And each time I know I step off the plane and that first breath in, it's like, oh man, you can't put in the words.
You get that sweet air, man, unless you get like a turbine in the face of your jet.
Right.
Which definitely has happened. And you're like, oh man. But then you get that flight air and you're like,
what does the future look like for you? What are you looking forward to next?
For me, I'm obviously really looking forward to my baby. I don't know what sex it is yet. So we're actually trying to do it old school.
Oh, no way. We did that with a couple of our
girls. I'm excited, man. Nowadays you got a lot of these gender reveals and, no offense, to each his own, but I kind of want to do it old school, more surprising.
It's a cool moment, man. It really is.
Super
it's so
excited.
Worth it.
And I know that as a guy, as a dad, I'm not going to be able to do really for the first 6 months. Other than just make sure that my wife is rational and happy. So, that'll be my focus. But I mean, to be honest, we have just so many different initiatives at the company that are kind of all coming to fruition here in the next 180 days that have been literally 4 years of work in the making.
Wow.
And so all of these things are finally coming together, and then I got to start finding some other initiatives to work on because,
right.
It's been 4 years of my life, man. So I've been working on these specific ones. So, I think I'm just really excited to see my team continue to thrive. I'm excited to finally, we have a lot of different internal processes that are finally going to be coming into place that, we've invested a lot of money in kind of technology, and we did it early on. And I'm excited to see those kind of pay dividends in terms of allowing us to be a little more nimble than a lot of other companies. And man, and just seeing my team continue to thrive, and just I'm excited to just be there for them and have them feel supported and, grow this thing with them.
I love that, man. I get to hear your heart for your team, your love for your team, and that leadership in you. I mean, that goes a long way in leading a healthy organization. So way to keep. I know there's times when it sucks and it's tough and you don't know up from down, but way to keep focused, man.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it, bro.
Yeah. So where can people find more about Waiakea?
Yeah. So check us out, waiakeasprings.com. You can also check us out on Instagram at just Waiakea. Waiakea. Some people forget that second A. You can find us in Whole Foods. Got a store locator online. Order, conveniently right to your door if you want. If you want to check out some of the projects that we're doing locally, check out our blog. We update it, every few weeks with a new upcoming project, stuff like that. So if you got ideas of different things we should volunteer for or, potentially invest in and help people out, find us, hit us up, and please find us and, we'll go from there.
I'll link all that stuff in the show notes, also on the blog as well. So you guys can look for that. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time today, man. And I just appreciate you and I appreciate what you guys are doing.
For sure. Hey, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. Mahalo.
I really enjoyed my conversation with Ryan, and just to kind of be upfront with you, we record these interviews a couple of months prior to releasing. And I was just recently going back to this conversation and editing, and it was cool to dive back into the conversation and hear more about Ryan's journey and his journey specifically with Waiakea. But we talked a lot about more than just the company and the product that they offer. We talked a lot about leadership, which is a huge heartbeat of mine. But we also talked family and we talked entrepreneurship. And it was cool to be able to connect and talk about big, audacious goals that he has and that I have and how I'm sure that you have. especially being early January at the time of this recording. And we're looking at 2020 and we're excited and we're stoked about the potential of this year and the potential of accomplishing those goals. But more than that, we talked a little bit about balance, and balance is kind of this tricky thing. And I don't think we ever really have full, true balance, but it's about setting those priorities, and it's about setting what really and truly matters to you, those values in your life. Those are individual values. So what you value is, and maybe something different than I value. But what's important is knowing what our values and our priorities are, and then going after our big goals. And that's where we find purpose. That's where we find fulfillment. So more so than the company that we're talking about, which is an amazing company, and they're doing amazing things. At the core of it, it's really about living a life of purpose. And that really comes across in Ryan and how he and his family are so tightly knit and they do life together. And that is a great model of not only just doing business and accomplishing big goals, but that's a great model of doing life, is including your family in all aspects of your life, and having someone, maybe it's not your family, but having a group of people that you can go to intimately who know all your stuff, right? Someone that you can be vulnerable and honest with. That does something for the soul that you can't put into words. Well, I just want to say thank you again to Ryan for coming on the podcast and for his time. And I hope that this conversation, you found value in it. And if you did, please leave a rating. Let me know. We'd love to hear from you. So until next time, be well. Aloha.
Thanks for listening to Hawaii's Best Podcast. Stay up to date on future episodes, be sure to hit the subscribe button and find us at livehawaiisbest.com.